Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. Yes, it is another episode of League Unlocked. Eric Mark here with you guys for week 3 global power rankings. We can now, 3 weeks in, just call them. Are they still too early? Maybe the round robin's over for the LCK Cup, so it can't be too early now, right?
I'm ready to remove the way too early label in this case. I think, again, you would like to have more games, really, to be so confident in a global rankings and the positionings and everything else like that. But that's not the luxury that we have this year around because, again, First Stand will be here quicker than you think. And knowing that, yes, LCK has already run through the round robin, absolutely. I'm willing to take away the too early label on these power rankings. I think we can just call them the global power rankings.
We've got at least 5 games played for most of these squads. I think everybody but Cloud9, which, it's just because they've been so dominant. So that's plenty to be talking about. So let's get to the list. There's a big change, lots of changes, especially in that 20 to 11 zone. And that is because of the volatility of best of ones in EU. And still, even though we're not calling it, there's still a small sample size of games. And with that, we have a new LCS team joining as Lion Gaming exit after the loss to Cloud9. It's FlyQuest coming in the 20 spot, who we have had our fair share of glazing very early on in this season.
And they've given us plenty of opportunity and reason to be on that glazing side and be very happy with what they have done and deserving of this positioning. And this is kind of crazy because no way you would have expected FlyQuest would find themselves on a list like this early in the year. Even if you thought everything was going to go right, there were going to be all the good positive signs early. It has been better than anybody could have expected, I think, because number one, you're getting contributions and carry performances from Masu. And that's not something that would have been unexpected, but it's certainly the first check mark when you're looking at this roster that you needed to be a contributing member and one of the leading charges of it. And then as well, we've talked so much about the young players, Cryogen, and of course, Griffin, and what they've been able to bring to this team right away in the LCS. Very ecstatic about what we have seen from this FlyQuest team so far. Very hopeful that it can continue to grow and develop here in the LCS.
And for a roster that's so young, they haven't looked lost on the Rift in terms of, where to go, what objective to fight over, where to move next on the map. They've, for the most part, been in sync against Saber one bad Baron throw. So very curious to see how they match up again on that winner side against Cloud9 in the 2-0 zone. G2 climbs a couple spots, but they're still very much in the warming up phase. They're the pot of water that we keep opening the lid to see. No, it's not boiling yet. No, it's still not boiling. You see it rising, but not boiling yet for G2.
And it's just crazy because usually this is an instant meal. This is ramen noodles, get out the boiling water and start of the year. G2 is right there. Your meal's prepped. Not the case this time around. It does seem to be more of that slow cooker, pasta, water pot, just barely getting to a boil. But I think we will get to that boil for G2. That is still something that I think is on the table in the cards for this team. But you absolutely want to see a little bit more teeth, a little bit more ferocity, I think, from them as we move into this next section of the LEC.
Their part place deserves to be higher than 18 and ahead of some of these middling LCK squads like KT and Nongshim, who got the head-to-head win against KT, so they come on to this list for the first time of the year. KT gets bumped down a little, and I know we'll throw in Hanwha Life here on this board to do the LCK triumvirate, and I know we had them below these two on the LCK rankings, but when you get globally again, hypothetically, you're matching up these squads against interregional play, and I couldn't put Hanwha Life at like 18 or barely on this board, even with how things played out early on in this split and, them being the LOL 10th place team in the LCK. We know they're not the 10th place team.
It's unfortunate because it's a situation where someone is going to be disrespected. Someone's going to be unhappy either way, right? Whether you are throwing Hanwha Life up in this territory or you're completely removing them and not having them here type of thing. Either way, you're splitting it. It's disrespect. And I think that an important one in the safe side to take is respecting the power that exists on that Hanwha Life roster and what you envision them to be within an international order, an international scene type of thing. You got to throw them into this type of consideration. But there is obviously the consequence, and that is them hanging around with squads like KT Rolster, like everyone else that you're not expecting them to be around in this type of power tier. That's the result that it is, and I will give a shout out to Nongshim in here, because certainly one of the teams that absolutely is the heroes of the bros in the LCK. That's all the way that's got to be. The bros got to be thanking them big time with a big 0-5 salute into the playoffs.
At least a nice dinner is in order from the bros for Nongshim, and I think they should at least maybe win a game, or the real repayment would be to have an upset series win for bros to get that goose egg off the scoreline for the LCK Cup. LNG continues their assault on the rest of these rankings. 6-0, 12-2 overall. Only dropped 2 games. We've hyped them up and up. It doesn't matter really how much more they dominate in this group stage. We got to see them in a best of 5 against some of these at least middle to upper tier squads in the LPL before they'll probably climb any higher than 15.
Which is pretty much the last check mark that they needed in my books to get into the dark horse label for the LPL, because that's kind of the same, baby. More or less the same type of territory that we have felt about these other dark horse representatives within the LPL so many times of, yes, I think that you are legitimate. You are somewhere on that type of radar, but I need it proven in a best of series. And it's going to be, well, when we get best of series, playoffs, and it's going to be against these playoff caliber teams. So that absolutely is that next one on the docket, next kind of moving block that you're looking at for a squad like LNG. But they've done everything that they could at this point of the year to prove that they do belong in a list like this.
Last squads on this board, it's a trio of LEC squads. Obviously, you see Movistar Koi get bumped out of that top 10. They lose to Las Britonas. They lose to Heretics. They squeak by SK in what was far and away their worst week of the split. They've still, got some good graces from what they did in weeks 1 and 2, but at the bottom of this trio. But truthfully, even though Navi has been right behind KC in terms of the most consistent, going 2-1 every single week, it feels like these 3, and you could maybe even now throw in G2, these could fluctuate within a single day if there's multiple games these squads are playing. That's how close they are.
This is where the shifting will be happening within the LEC. Don't look at the shifters. This is the shift in the LEC where it's really happening. These teams and where they position themselves as far as the power ranking, power position in the LEC. I think for Movistar Koi, absolutely a disappointing week when you look at it overall, and you can pinpoint some players. Unfortunately, I think Merwin, Super, you could look at them as guys that needed to be able to contribute more, have a better performance, have overall more resolve in, I think, some of these matches. But you still got to be viewing them as one of these teams that can have the potential to keep moving up, keeping them in a strong position in this power ranking. They need a bounce back weekend, I will say.
I think it's going to be the last week of the round robin best of action, and we're well past now. Okay, best of ones is enough. Give me a best of series to actually tell who's going to be the best, because even another 3 games, whatever played, it's not really going to change your feelings about these squads too much, apart from, I don't know, an abysmal 0-3 from Carmine Corp or something shaking things up. We need to see more, because a one-of upset doesn't necessarily mean a team is better than the other, right? We know how best of 5 work.
There's just such a limited amount that you can take away from a best of 1 scenario on either side, right? The winner or the loser, in comparison to looking at what we know to be crucial and valuable skills is navigating a series, the pick and ban, the fearless draft that is involved with it, emotions, just keeping your energy and locked in focus, all sorts of things that we know are parts of it, even when you extend from best of 1 to best of 3. So it absolutely is going to be something that you're going to be keeping track of in the LEC, and in a thing that will introduce a whole nother level of swap and shifting of places for these European squads.
We continue the theme of praising some Western squads as we roll into the top 10 side of things. And you're wondering, where's Cloud9 been? The most dominant squad in the LCS? Well, with some shaky play in really that whole 11 to 15 zone and another I don't want to say dominant, but convincing 2-0 against a main competitor in Leon Gaming, Cloud9 ascends to that number 10 zone. A surprisingly dominant start so far for them.
I'm not going to go with a dominant win against Leon, but I absolutely will say a confident win against
That's
Leon.
fair.
It was the way that you saw the performance coming through. Again, continuing some strong play this year from Sven in the bottom lane with the way that he is contributing and positioning himself. APA taking on and really kind of changing some of the attitude and vibes around this Cloud9 organization. And again, frankly, something that could have been predictable, knowing the type of player and personality that he brings to the Rift, but seeing how well it has been integrated within Cloud9 due to changes within, obviously, the roster with him joining in, but as well off the Rift with, I Will Dominate being involved with the coaching staff. I think, again, a lot of very good reasons to be hopeful and be on board with the good signs you have seen from this Cloud9 team so early. And this is the good timeline. C9 fans, I tell you what, you didn't feel so great maybe early, Kespa Cup time, and you didn't believe when I told you. I still think there is room for this team to absolutely rebound and figure themselves out and become a more solid product before we get to that LCS. And boy, did they ever deliver on that. And they have continued that throughout these early weeks in the LCS.
Again, 10 spot difference between them and FlyQuest on here, but this isn't, Dignitas and Disguise that Cloud9 have beaten. Leon and Team Liquid were their two main competition in the offseason. I think that was pretty much a consensus top 3 heading into it. And the fact that Cloud9 have yet to drop a game by beating both of those is why they're in this 10 spot right now.
Yeah, and you're going to have to see, again, that it will be one of the very next tests that you'll be keeping your eye out for is that FlyQuest head-to-head. See how FlyQuest can stack up. What is the quality of this match all going to be playing out from both sides? All sorts of things will be that evaluating point from the LCS. But right now, with what we have seen, there's no denying that Cloud9 has jumped out in front of everybody else, putting together wins against a leading Team Liquid, and now Leon Gaming answering the call. This has been Cloud9's region.
Despite, some impressive play, it's still Carmine Corp, the top Western squad, hanging strong in that 9 spot, and the only blemish really on the weekend was a loss to Team Vitality. And I mean, truthfully, again, best of 1 scenario, and Vitality played way out of their weight class and just had a fantastic showing across the board and a well-deserved win. There was really no big knock against KC. It was more all praise for Vitality in that game.
It's hard because it doesn't happen as often for some of these squads that find themselves within a top 10 of the global power rankings type of situation, prowess, whatever. It doesn't happen all that often, but sometimes you just got to tip your cap to your opponent and you go, you know what? It wasn't about that we couldn't do this or didn't execute or brought in a bad, performance on the day. You just were better and you rose to the challenge. And so you got to give that acknowledgement. I think that simply was the case in that Vitality game. It doesn't change all the positives and all the good things that I am feeling and thinking about Carmine Corp right now. And specifically, I think it has been that connection that has been developing and deepening between the bot lane duo of Busio and, of course, Kalist. And that has been, I think, one of the things that we talked about so much with Carmine Corp, and whether how far they were going to get and how good they could be depended on how quickly these two would develop that chemistry, that synergy. And I think, again, we've seen large strides taken in that week by week so far already in the LEC. Feeling good about it for Carmine Corp.
Again, the only squad that you can confidently say have a top 1, top 2 in their position for pretty much everywhere but mid lane. Yahoo still has time to warm up and get into things, but top 3 is like the ceiling or the floor for a lot of the spots on this roster. So yeah, still feeling good about them. The big climb in the top 10 is Weibo Gaming, and even though they threw a 6K lead and lost the series to Anyone's Legend, they played 2 out of 3 fantastic games. They got pumped in game 2, but 2 out of 3 really good games. They're 2-0 against JDG, and Elk had himself a series, some absolutely disgusting Kai'Sa plays against AL today.
And that's been the difference maker for me, really. I think, one, you can acknowledge and give, I think, a little bit of credit over to Xiaohu. I think he certainly is, again, going to be, of course, one of the main engines, one of the main focal points when you're talking about this Weibo squad and how they're performing. But for Elk, he is a difference maker. He is someone that puts you over the top, over an average performance when he's able to get into this type of mode and be the deliverer of damage, deliverer of pain for Weibo Gaming. Very excited by this one because I think this is Weibo that is showing maybe a little bit more competency, a little bit more teeth than expected at this point in the LPL, which, as you know, when we talked about the LPL, with having kind of Anyone's Legend and a BLG, and despite what we think about BLG being those top 2, you wanted more of a rising challengers pack to start taking them down. Talked about LNG and what's waiting for them, and I think you can throw Weibo even into that category even more so as we move up in here and what they have accomplished so far. Very much so excited to see them challenging and rising up the LPL.
What Weibo leveling up also does, and it's not just because of the head-to-head, but JDG sitting there sweating in that 5 spot to round out the top 5 as they get bumped down a little with, some series losses, and all of a sudden we're not quite feeling as confident with, the whole lineup, maybe save for Gala. Xiaoshu didn't have a great week, but truthfully, who else do you put in top 5 right now? It's really just a contest of who floundered the least over the week.
They've gotten themselves and done enough good positive work and showcased it to hold on to a spot like this despite a little bit of wobble in their performance and in their strength. I think is how you kind of look at a squad like this JDG team. Yes, it may be one of those ones where if all things predicted, a Hanwha Life would probably be in a position like this type of territory. Everything went right for them in the LCK, but that's not the world that we live in, and we live in this one where it is still JDG holding on here. I think you can talk about Junjia as well, someone we do have confidence in, but I think is giving some shaky level of performances right now for JDG, so that's an area that I would look for a bounce back or turnaround. And as well, you're talking again about his team that still has themselves positioned well within the LPL right now.
There's ebbs and flows with both Weibo and JDG and even BLG. Really, you stop feeling sus about any team on this board when you get to the top 3, and that is Anyone's Legend. Even though, again, they almost lost to Weibo, we got to give the mega shout out for a Nefiri versus Varus top lane matchup, and Zika even gets a pretty early triple kill on this Varus, but it is Flandre bouncing back and kind of winning some of these final comeback team fights for AL on the Doge.
I'm sorry, Flandre. I disrespected your game. I didn't know you had it in you to bust out the dog and beat Nefiri in that top side. And, man, he looked pretty good on it. He was absolutely looking comfortable and knowing where and how to push and make this champion all the right buttons, all the right timings to make sure that you are that presence, that threat, and playing to your role. And that's a role that, frankly, Flandre doesn't really play almost ever in any of these type of situations or compositions. So happy to see that for him, and definitely want to give him a tip of the cap on that. But yes, Anyone's Legend has held this position, held this strength within the LPL for right now, and you can push them up right into this top 3 type of territory. But I'm not fooled. I'm not convinced that number 3 is the same as number 2 and number 1 right now when we're looking at this top 3.
Well, especially now, top 2 seeds for the 5-0 Gen G T1. We're basically waiting 2 weeks. We're not seeing them on the Rift until around Valentine's Day, so pretty much locked in. It doesn't matter how games go next week. These are going to be your top 2 because it doesn't really matter what AL, BLG, JDG do. They're not going to be taking over either T1 or Gen G. And real quick, the Gen G side of things. Here's the one note, one stat you need. The top 5 KDAs in the entire LCK are the 5 players from Gen G, and the highest among those is Keen at 9.3. And yes, 9.3 sounds really good, but when you realize it's for a top laner, it's even more insane because the next highest is Doran with a 4.0 KDA. Keen has more than twice the KDA that Doran has.
That's wild because Doran has been phenomenal for T1 to start out this year, but it really leads into kind of what I was hoping and waiting to talk about with Gen G is, you can talk about all the 5 members being up there, which is, again, how does it happen and just kind of get swept under the rug with all the success and excellency of Gen G that is a crazy type of thing going on with those numbers. But again, that's just what you expect and
we're spoiled by it. We're almost expecting it now.
But I will say Keen has been the standout in this early sessions so far for Gen G, and I'm glad that the statistics, the numbers, things like that all point towards it because it has been clear as day watching these games that he is a different beast, a different level of responsibility and contribution for this iteration of Gen G, and I think that's a phenomenal thing for them and a scary thing for the rest of the LCK.
Yeah, I mean, Gen G is really like that big boss that has 4 different phases, right? You get through one, okay, we handled the bot lane, it's fine, on to the next one, Chovy comes in, that's fine, and then now the final phase has been Keen on a Gwen or something, just skulking around at the end of a team fight to come over, but yes, that Gen G is the raid boss for a reason.
And it's like the Uber Dark Souls modded hard boss where not only is he the 3rd one, you have to get through 2 Dark Souls level bosses in Chovy, Ruler, Canyon, whatever. Duro, you want to throw any of those guys in there, those are Dark Souls level bosses of the LCK that you got to be on top of, getting your advantages on, beating in lane, whatever, already before you get to the final boss right now of Gen G. That has been Keen in the top side.
11-0 overall. Ain't nobody been able to take down this boss yet in 2026. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, Stunners. Thanks for hanging out.